Nelson's Primary School. Today we will start with subject English text, lesson number 10, Tabby's Tablecloth. The author of this chapter is Louisa May Alcott. Characters in the story are Tabby, Deacon Cyrus Hosmer, Mr. Bliss, Mrs. Bliss, and two British officers. Now we will see the plotting of the story. This story celebrates the courage of a young American girl who saves the newly founded United States from betrayal and a subsequent attack by British soldiers. Now we will see in the story that how a 14-year-old child saved the newly founded United States. So come on, let's go to the story. Before we go to the chapter's explanation, we'll see about this chapter's author, Louisa May Alcott. She was born in 1832 and she died in 1888. Here you can see the picture of Louisa May Alcott. She was an American novelist, short story writer and poet, best known as the author of the novel Little Women and its sequels Little Man and George Boys. Most of her stories are based on her own childhood experiences and set in Concord, Massachusetts. She grew up among many of the well-known intellectuals of the day, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, etc. Now we'll go to this chapter's explanation. There was a young girl of 14 years. Her name was Tabitha Tarbell, but everybody used to call her Tabby. She was living in Concord, Massachusetts. She was a bright-eyed girl and very brave, active, and full of patriotism. On 20th March 1775, she was walking along the road. She had a basket of eggs in her hand. She seemed very anxious and upset because of rumors that British were coming to Concord and they wanted to destroy supplies which was stored in the town. She was carrying a secret message in her basket from her uncle to Deacon Cyrus Hosmer, and they have the people of the town have hidden valuable things they have hidden in the nearby houses, like gunpowder, axes, stands, guns, cartridges, and the cannons were hidden in the woods. And every day, every night, 10 men, they used to patrol the town and they used to guard all the valuable things that nobody could take it. Then the brave farmers were also ready to fight with the Britishers. Okay. And there were Tories in the town and they were passing all the information, whichever information they were getting from the townspeople, they were passing to the British enemies. Okay. So they were using passwords and secret signals to send the messages. So one of the secret message she was having and she was taking in a basket and she went to give to Deacon Cyrus Hosmer. As she was going hurriedly, suddenly she got scared by seeing two strangers. That strangers came to Tabby and asked, "Do you know where Mr. Bliss lives?" So Tabby was sure that these strangers are Britishers because Mr. Bliss was a well-known Tory. But then also she politely and calmly replied that yes, from here little further Mr. Bliss lives. Then she ran towards Mr. Hosmer's house and gave the secret message and informed that two strangers are in town and they went to Mr. Bliss's house. So Mr. Hosmer said, then we should know what they are going to plan. Mr. Hosmer said to Mrs. Hosmer that give some more eggs to Tabby and send a message to Mrs. Bliss. Tabby will carry this over there. So Tabby went there. She gave the eggs and message to Mrs. Bliss. She was cooking in the kitchen with her maid. So Tabby asked, "Can I help, ma'am?" So maid replied, "No, but you can go to home." As she stepped out of the kitchen, she saw table was set in a great style with a long fine tablecloth, and she saw from the window that Mr. Bliss and two strangers were talking, but they were talking in too low voice that she could not hear anything. By that time, cat came out of table and sat on windowsill. So she got idea that yes, she can also hide herself under the table to listen the talks between these people. So she thought, what would happen if they will catch me? But it would be great if I'll get all the details of them, that what they are going to plan. Then she hid herself under the table, and three of them came on the table to eat, and they were very busy first to eat. And after some time they started to talk about business. Then she proved that she was right, because one stranger was Captain Brown and another was junior officer of the British Army, and they have come here to find out where the supplies were stored and how well the town was defended. And Mr. Bliss was giving all the details to them, that where gunpowder, cannon, etc. were hidden, so they can seize and destroy. By that time, when Mr. Bliss was giving all the details, Captain Brown brought his heavy heel forward and kept down on Tabby's hand. So she bit her lips, and though faint with pain, she heard everything. But suddenly she sneezed, and now she was very scared that they will catch her. Now she was hiding her face, and one of the officers asked, "What was that?" And he took his hand to the cloth to check under the table. Tabby started shivering by looking at the big brown hand. Then the next moment that cat came and sat on her skirts. When the cloth was raised, that cat got up and walked out purring loudly. And officer said, "It's only cat, gentlemen. We were lucky that nobody was there to hear our talk." And then three of them left the room and set off for Boston. Tabby came out and jumped over the window sill and ran away. Then she gave all the information and escaped themselves, because the Britishers were on their way to Boston, and Tabby got great praise for this task. The people of town moved their valuable things to other town, and they were ready to fight with their cannons and minutemen, who had trained everyone. The farmers also fight with them very well. After the fight was over, they buried the dead people, they cared for those who were wounded, and they punished the Tories. Daniel Bliss' property was taken over by the government, and most of the things were sold at an auction. Tabby's uncle bought the tablecloth and gave it to Tabby and said that this tablecloth belongs to her, and thanked to Tabby that her quick eyes and ears saved the town. Tabby kept the tablecloth carefully with her, and she whenever tells this story, she displays that with great satisfaction. Then after Tabby, it was preserved by her daughter as a token of her mother's bravery. In 1861, Tabby's tablecloth saw another war and made an honorable end as a box full of finest lint and softest squares to lay on the wounds of soldiers at war. I hope everybody understood this chapter without any doubt. Now we are going to do chapter reading. Chapter 10, Tabby's Tablecloth. On the 20th day of March 1775, Tabitha Tarbell, a slender girl, was walking along a country road. She had a basket of eggs on her arm. She seemed to be in a great hurry and looked anxiously as she went, for those were dangerous times. Tabitha, or Tabby as she was called, lived in Concord, Massachusetts. She was a bright-eyed girl of 14, full of vigor and patriotism. Tabby was agitated and angry too by the rumors that the British were coming to Concord. They were coming to destroy the supplies stored there. In nearly every house, something valuable was hidden: gunpowder, axes, tents, guns, and cartridges. The cannons were hidden in the woods. A guard of 10 men patrolled the town at night. The brave farmers were getting ready for what they felt must come. There were Tories in the town who gave the enemy all the information they could gather. Therefore, much caution was necessary in making plans. Passwords and secret signals were used. Messages were sent from house to house in all sorts of strange ways. Such a message now lay hidden under the eggs in Tabby's basket. The girl was carrying a secret message from her uncle to Deccan Cyrus Hosmer, who lived at the other end of the town. She had been employed several times before in the same way and had done her job well. Suddenly, Tabby's cheeks turned pale. Her heart gave a thump as two men came inside and stopped suddenly on seeing her. They were strangers, although nothing in their dress indicated it. The girl quickly knew that they were British soldiers. They exchanged a few whispered words. Then they came forward. "My pretty lass, can you tell me where Mr. Daniel Bliss lives?" asked the younger man with a smile. Tabby was sure now that they were British. Bliss was a well-known Tory, but she showed no sign of alarm. She answered politely, "Yes, sir, a little further down." They went on, never dreaming that the innocent girl was soon going to get the better of them. She hurried away to Deccan Hosmer's home and handed over the message. Then she added the news that two strangers were in town. "We must know more about them," said the Deccan. He turned to his wife and said, "Send her with some eggs to Mrs. Bliss. Tabby can look around while she rests and gossips over them. We must keep track of Bliss' activities, for he is a Tory and will do us harm." Coming to the Tory's house about noon, she could smell roasting meat and baking pies. Stepping softly to the back door, she peeped in and saw Mrs. Bliss and her maid cooking in the big kitchen. They were too busy to notice the little spy, who slipped round to the front of the house. What she saw made her suspicious. In the dining room, a table was set in great style with the best china and a fine long tablecloth. Still another peep through the living room windows showed her the two strangers with Mr. Bliss. Unfortunately, they talked in too low a tone for a word to reach even her sharp ears. "I must know what they are planning. I'm sure it's bad, and I want to go home till I find out," thought Tabby. Marching into the kitchen, she presented the eggs with a message from Madame Hosmer. "They are mighty welcome, child. We have unexpected company for dinner," said Mrs. Bliss. "Can I help, ma'am? I'm quite good at beating eggs. Besides, I'm tired and wouldn't mind sitting a bit if I'm not in the way," said Tabby. "But you are in the way," said the old maid. "We don't want any help, so you would better be stepping along home." Picking up her basket, Tabby marched out of the kitchen with her nose in the air. But as she passed the front of the house, she could not resist another look through the open window. As she leaned in, something moved under the long tablecloth that almost swept the floor. Suddenly, out popped a grey cat's head. Then the cat came up purring to meet the newcomer. "Do I dare to do it? What will happen to me if they find me? But how wonderful it would be if I could hear what these men are plotting," Tabby thought to herself. Hiding the basket among the bushes, she leaped lightly in. While the cat sat on the windowsill, calmly washing its face, she vanished under the table. Tabby's heart began to flutter. It was too late to retreat. The poor girl could only make herself as small as possible, quite hidden under the long folds of the tablecloth. But by the time the guests were called in, Tabby was calm again. For a time, the hungry gentlemen were too busy eating to talk much, but soon they were ready for business. They drew closer together and spoke in low voices. However, she heard enough to prove that she was right. The newcomers were Captain Brown and another junior officer of the British Army. They had come to find out where the supplies were stored and how well the town was defended. "These people won't fight, will they?" asked Captain Brown. "Of course they will. They will fight you to death," answered Mr. Bliss. The captain swore. He gave a stamp that brought his heavy heel down on Tabby's hand as she leaned forward. The blow nearly forced a cry from her. Though faint with pain, she bit her lips and never stirred. When she could listen again, Mr. Bliss was telling the visitors all he knew about the hiding places of the gunpowder, the cannons, and the other things the enemy wished to seize and destroy. "They are coming," he said. "They will fight you to death. I can see them. They will fight you to death." Tabby, who had been listening, heard him say, "They will fight you to death." "But how wonderful it would be if I could hear what these men are plotting." Tabby thought to herself. Hiding the basket Just as they were preparing to leave the table, Tabby was overcome by a sudden sneeze. She thought she was lost. She hid her face, expecting to be dragged out any moment. "What's that?" exclaimed the officer. "It came from under the table," added Captain Brown. A hand lifted a corner of the cloth. A shiver went through Tabby. She held her breath with her eyes upon that big brown hand, but the next moment she could have laughed with joy, for the cat saved her. The cat had come to doors on her warm skirts. Now, when the cloth was raised, thinking she was to be fed, the cat rose and walked out, purring loudly, tail straight up, with its tip waving like a flag of truce. "It's only the old cat, gentlemen, a good beast, and luckily for us, unable to report our talk," said Mr. Bliss with a sigh of relief. Soon after this, they left the room, and the three men, the two visitors and the local Tories, set off for Boston. Then the spy crept out softly, jumped over the window sill, and ran away as fast as her stiff legs could carry her. By the time she told her tale, however, the British soldiers were well on the way to Boston, so they managed to escape. But the warning was given, and Tabby received great praise for her hour under the table. The people had time to move the valuable supplies to other towns nearby. They got their cannons ready, and the Minutemen had them trained on the enemy. Those brave farmers meant to the fight, and the world knows how well they did it when the hour came. Much later, when the fighting was over, the dead buried, the wounded cared for, and the Tories punished. Daniel Bliss' property was taken over by the government. Many of his things were sold at an auction. Tabby's uncle bought the tablecloth and gave it to her, saying, "There, my girl, this rightly belongs to you. Thanks to your quick eyes and ears, we were not taken by surprise, but sent the red coats back faster than they came." Tabby kept the tablecloth carefully, displaying it with immense satisfaction where she told the story. Then it was preserved by her daughter as a token of her mother's bravery. In 1861, Tabby's tablecloth saw another war and made an honorable end as a box full of finest lint and softest squares to lay on the wounds of soldiers at war. This chapter was written by Louisa May Alcott. 29th November 1832, and she died on 6th March 1888. She was an American novelist. She is best known for the novel Little Women and its sequels Little Man and Jaws Boys. Most of her stories are based on her own childhood experiences and set in Concord, Massachusetts. Thank you.